We'll begin our examination of conditional command execution by looking at a very rudimentary way that you can cause a command to be executed based on a given condition. So let's look at that rudimentary way now. The condition that I'm talking about is always expressed in terms of the exit status of another program. That's what we just looked at, the exit status from the last module. That is always used as our condition upon which we should run another command or not. So that's the way you can think about this whole chapter, if you like. If we are to run a particular piece of code or not, the condition that that is based on is always related to whether one program exited with a 0 or a non-zero exit status. So, as I said, let's have a look at the first rudimentary way of doing that. And this is how you do it. Command 1 ampersand command 2. Now what that does is it means that command 2 will only run if command 1 completes with an exit status of 0. So you can think of that meaning as if command 1 completed with no errors, or if command 1 returned a value of true, if you like, then run command 2. There's another one. It's using the double pipe symbol. A C programmer will be familiar with that double pipe symbol. They'll know that it means OR. And that symbol means essentially run command 4 only if command 3 completed with an exit status that is not 0. In other words, if command 3 produced some kind of error, then run command 4. Or, put another way, if command 3 returned false, then run command 4. Let's have a look at some examples of that. First we have a simple example. Do an ls of a file called file1. Now we use the double ampersand, meaning that the second of those two commands, which is actually to copy that file into the /temp directory, that will only run if the ls returned a no error condition. So if you wanted to read that line in a human readable way, you would say run the ls program, check to see if file1 exists, and if it does, copy it into the /temp directory. Another way you could do it is you could say copy ABC to XYZ, and if that succeeds, then put out a message saying the file was copied OK. Now another example using the double pipe symbol. You can run the diff program. Now if diff differences between those two files, then it will return a value of 1, which we can think of as false, which will indeed cause the second command to run in this case. The second command, because we're using a double pipe symbol, the second command will only run if the first command produced a non-zero or an error exit status, which it will do if the files are different. Finally, if you needed to check for the existence of a file and you didn't want to proceed in your shell script if that file was not there, then you could write this code. List the file, and if the ls returns some kind of error, then the file was not there, so then you would exit. If you wanted to read that in a human readable way, you'd say check the file is there, if it's not, then exit. You could read that another way. You could say the file must be there, or else we exit. Now the only problem with these constructs is that they are very limited. They have a couple of limitations which I'll just mention to you. If your particular condition is met, then you can actually only perform one command. You may actually want to perform several commands. Now, yes, it is actually possible to perform several commands by grouping them all together using the parentheses, but that is a somewhat ugly way of doing it, and I don't really want to demonstrate that to you, but it is possible. I'll leave that as an optional exercise for you. And also, you may want to specify another command that you'd want to run if the condition is met. For example, with the very first example on this page, ls file1, now that basically says if the file exists, then copy it to /temp. Now if the file doesn't exist, you may actually want to put out an error message. So you may want one thing to happen if the condition is met, and you may want a different thing to happen if the condition is not met. And you can't do that using the double ampersand or the double pipe symbols. So this sort of conditional command execution is actually not done all that often. Some people use it. I use it myself, but only in very simple circumstances. So I suggest that you go and have a little practice with these just for the moment, just to get yourself familiar with them. I'm not going to demonstrate them any further. You can copy down the examples that I've just shown you on the screen, and then we'll move on to the next module.